Okay, this is going to be a great show because we're going to talk about stuff that drives us crazy.
Well, we do that every day.
Well, yeah, but especially me, because I live in the Miller Creek area, and weeds and, shall we say, urban deer just wreak havoc on my property. So
it's apocalyptic, I'm sure.
It certainly is. But we have guests in studio. It's Bryce Christians, no relation to me, by the way. And Sandy Perrin, she's a plant clinic horticulturist, all right? And Bryce is the weed district manager. So if anybody should know about weeds, it's Bryce, right?
We do get a lot of weed questions.
Okay.
Yes, try to find the best answers.
I'm sure you do. So now, I just want you to know that the lines are open right now at 721-1290, and we'd love to hear from you.
So if you want to get your weed
and now it's
just call.
It's not working now. Oh, try that.
Try that?
Yeah, it's working now.
Is it really?
There's something going on there.
Yeah.
How's it now?
Now it's good.
Well, there you
Good.
go.
If everybody stands on their right foot and has their hand above their head, it'll work. All right.
So, yeah, a lot of us are looking out at our lawns, and I just went through this dandelion freak out. I had dandelions everywhere. My yard was basically yellow, and then they all disappeared. I have no dandelions now that I can see. I mean, I know that the plant is probably still there.
What can I say? We do really good work here in Missoula County.
And it was just after talking with Bryce for like 30 minutes a couple of weeks ago. But you were telling me basically there's these cycles to the weeds, and the ones that you need to fight are the ones you don't see yet. You got to ninja prevention these weeds.
Yeah, so a lot of our weeds come in cycles based on their life strategy. So those early spring weeds that you're talking about, like dandelions, burr buttercup, there's a number of early spring chickweeds, perennial or pennycress. Most of those are winter annuals, so they're going to take advantage of the cool fall temperatures and moisture to get started, and then they kind of hang out through the winter, and then as soon as conditions are right in the spring, they're popping up and taking advantage of it before anything else that we really want out there is growing. And then when those start taking advantage of the warmer temperatures and moisture, they kind of step back and let the other plants take the show.
So for folks like me who saw the dandelions, or maybe are still seeing them, what is a good date to put on our calendar to remind ourselves to bring the heck, to bring the fury,
bring the thunder?
Yeah.
So that's always a hard question to answer, and we get that question a lot. Or what are the hard dates that I can mark on the calendar? And it's really dependent on when we start getting our fall moisture. Sometimes that's September, sometimes that's early October. But when you start seeing, we'll get that nice fall moisture. A couple weeks after that, you'll start to see the green up of those dandelion rosettes, and that's a really good time to start doing your active management.
So when people start dressing up like Disney characters, is about the time you need to go kill
maybe a little earlier than that.
Okay, got it.
Are you talking about work here?
Halloween.
Oh,
Halloween, Peter. Goodness gracious.
Yeah, Halloween might be a little late, but, we always have some warmer falls. So
all right, I got you. So what are we ready to kill now? Because I want to go kill stuff.
So a lot of calls that we're getting right now are on the classic noxious weeds that we have in western Montana. So spotted knapweed, leafy spurge, Dalmatian toadflax, those classic noxious weeds that everybody hates seeing in their pasture. They're not quite flowering yet, so they're taking in a lot of resources as they bolt and get ready to flower, and this is the perfect time to do treatment for those.
Now, spotted knapweed, I live in the Miller Creek area in a place that used to be a gravel pit, okay? And so they made it into a lot, and they made it cheap, and so I bought it. and so I have heard that whenever in an area like that where the ground is disturbed, where there's lots of stuff going on, that spotted knapweed love that. And they just dive right in there, and then they hide for a while, and then, boop, up they come. Is that right?
Yep, so a lot of our weeds love disturbance. And we have a lot of knapweed in western Montana, so there's a pretty solid seed bank in the soil.
Can I ask, where did spotted knapweed come from? It's not a native plant, is it?
Definitely not a native plant. Nope, it came from around the Baltic, Eurasia type part of...
The Russians, Peter.
Yep.
We've been hacked.
Hillary Clinton and Trump bought them over here, and that's what happened.
Bummer. But now, spotted knapweed, could you, because this is radio, could you just briefly describe what spotted knapweed looks like so that people can say, oh, that's what I have in my backyard?
I am not that creative or able to describe it over the radio, but I would say there's a lot of good resources on the internet. If you go to our website, Missoula.YouTube,
It has purple flowers, right?
Yep. Yeah, purple flowers, but right now you're not going to be seeing those.
Right.
The purple flowers don't really show up until late July, early August. So
Okay. Right.
it's kind of a nondescript plant right now. Pretty basic rosette and green.
But now there's something else I heard about. And please, I'm coming up with all these urban myths, and I want you to squash them or say, yes, Peter, you're brilliant. You're brilliant. Okay, so I have been told that spotted knapweed has its own defense mechanism. If you look at the bottom of a spotted knapweed plant, it's usually black underneath there. And someone told me, and I'm not sure who it was, that nothing else will grow around it because it secretes its own poison to protect its space. Now, is that right or not?
In a sense, yes, that is right. There are a number of plant species that secrete their own chemicals into the soil around them. Sometimes that's simple as salt. So salt cedar is another invasive plant that we have in eastern Montana, and it secretes salt into the soil that makes it a little too basic for most plants to grow around it. Knapweed also does something similar to that, and they're trying to really nail down what exactly the chemical is. But yeah, it can produce its own herbicide in a sense.
So is that one reason why you should never pull spotted knapweed with your bare hands?
So I think it's a different chemical reaction. Some people just have an allergic reaction to knapweed when they're pulling it, so you get a rash on your hands or arms.
All right. No, it's happening again, John. I'm sorry. Poor John. We're up against our first break anyway. We'll get the junior engineer in here and see if we can get this microphone fixed. We're going to come right back with Bryce Christians and Sandy Perrin, and we'd love to have your questions about weeds or noxious weeds or things going on in your yard that maybe you want to have happen. I know Sandy would like to talk about that. 721-1290 is our number, and we will be right back. All right, we are back. This is Talkback. 721-1290 is our number, 1-800-568-5309. John King is right over there. Good morning, John.
Am I really? I am.
You're here. There
the microphone's working
there
again.
You go. Just don't touch it. Bryce Christians, weed district manager for Missoula County, and Sandy Perrin, a plant clinic horticulturist. But Jack is on the line right now. Good morning, Jack. How are you?
Good morning.
What's on your mind, sir?
Well, I have some property between Stevensville and Florence, and when we bought it about 10 years ago, it was just loaded with knapweed. And so we've been trying to get rid of it. And this spring, I found something that was very different. Some of the knapweed had actually died, and so without any kind of work on my part. And I looked at it, and it looked like a squirrel or something had been digging around at the root. And when I picked it up, there was a white larvae in there. So I'm wondering if that is some sort of a mechanism that I can trust to be back, and magpies is what was doing the digging, I guess, to get after this larva.
Yeah. So what you were finding there was the leftover remains of the damage that some of the biological weed control bugs that we've released will do for spotted knapweed. So the big grub that you were finding is the larvae for a weevil called Siphocoleonis, and we've introduced those, or folks have introduced those into western Montana starting in the late 70s, and they've started to establish in all of our western Montana valleys. And they don't always kill the plants, but if there's additional stress on the plants, it will completely knock them out. But they end up shortening the lifespan of the weeds and making them less vigorous, so they produce fewer seeds.
So come on over here, John. Come on over here. You can use my microphone.
But I guess my question was, so did you go out to Stevensville and put this insect on his property? You said you brought the insect. So how did that work out?
So a number of the Corvallis Research Station that's associated with MSU Extension, they had a researcher there in the 70s that actually went over to the native range where spotted knapweed grows as a native plant.
Thanks, Jack.
And they found insects that just fed on knapweed exclusively, and did a number of research projects to make sure that they wouldn't jump ship and eat something that we didn't want them to eat here. But once they figured out that they really had a close relationship with spotted knapweed, they started rearing them and then releasing them in western Montana.
So is there like a bug farm? I mean, do you like rock them to sleep and stuff? I mean,
we literally used to do something like that. We would have small insectaries around where we would put metal flashing and plant knapweed inside of it to make sure we were collecting the insects. But they've been so successful in establishing that now we identify patches where there are good, healthy populations, and then we'll have folks come in and collect about 50 to 100 of them, and then they can release them on their property. So if people are interested in getting these bugs, they can call our office or email our office, and we can put them on a list for when they emerge and we're doing collections, and then we can get them bugs for their property.
I am just imagining there are people in our audience going right now, wait a minute, this is a plot. I just know they're trying to make these bugs take over the world. No, seriously. So how do you know that these bugs are benign to other plants and animals and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so we work with a number of researchers both here in Montana as well as in the home range in Switzerland, Spain, and Italy that put a lot of time identifying plants that they would potentially impact, either that are really closely related in the same plant family or are just very economically important. We don't want them to jump ship and attack any of our crops. So there's about 10 years of research that goes into each one of these insects to make sure that they can be trusted when they come here and be released.
So you have this insect for spotted knapweed, whose name I won't recall, but sounds horrible, like Voldemort or something. And then do you have other, excuse me, do you have other types of insects that take on different weeds?
Yeah, so in western Montana right now, I think we have 4 very successful biocontrol systems where we have an insect that feeds and does significant damage to the weeds. Leafy spurge has a number of insects that attack it. Spotted knapweed, Dalmatian toadflax, and yellow toadflax. But in other parts of the West, there are other insects that attack rush skeleton weed. There are insects that attack St. John's wort, purple loosestrife. It just depends on where you have large populations of the weed that can sustain those insect populations.
But let me ask: does it cost a lot of money to get these insects working for you, or what?
So, fortunately, a lot of the resources and funding that go into these go into that research component. So, the states of Montana and Wyoming, a number of our neighbors to the north, Alberta and Saskatchewan, put a lot of money into the initial research. But once we have them over here, it doesn't really cost you a lot of money to move them around or to manage them. So it doesn't cost landowners really anything at all.
Well, we do want to make sure that the bugs do get a living wage. So that's always important.
Yep, they get all the weeds they want to eat.
All right, let's get Bobby. Bobby, you're on Talkback with our guests. Hi.
Hi. Well, that weevil came onto my place about 12 years ago, and I had quite a bit of knapweed, and I was battling that. And after the weevil came around, I don't have any more knapweed. The last time I saw knapweed here was at least 4 years ago. That bug really works.
Wow.
But then after the knapweed came the Horticulturast, which was spread by the road department. And that thing, it was in the gravel, and they sprayed it along the road. And that's how we got it. And I can back that up by saying I was part of the grant program to help get rid of it. But no matter what you do, if you've got surrounding areas, and it will always come back in. It's insidious. And it's also toxic to horses. Horse eats Horticulturast, and within hours they found her. It's a bad, bad thing. And then, about 4 or 5 years ago, the kochia came in. And I was told by one of my farmer friends that the kochia came in as livestock feed. They baled it up in Texas, and they shipped it up here. I have no way to back that up, but that's what I was told. And the kochia, one little kochia seed shows up, and it looks like a cute little plant. It can grow to be like about, 3 to 6 feet tall, about 3 feet in diameter.
Wow.
Then September or October, the root breaks off, and then it blows like a tumbleweed with its thousands of seeds, and it spreads it everywhere. And every single one of those things, I've been battling it, and I've just about got it done. But every day, I go out and look for it. And if you have one seed, you can spray Roundup. I don't care what you use. Within 10 years, if there's seeds underneath the ground, that'll still sprout 10 years from now. So now there's a new one I read about called the skeleton rush. Can you tell me about that one? Because that one sounds really bad.
Tell you what, hang on to that. And Bobby, we're going to let you go because we've got to take a break. We'll come back and talk about that. And we have all 4 lines open if you want to talk with Bryce and Sandy, who hasn't had a chance to say a word yet. She is actually here. Say hello, Sandy.
Hello.
All right. We're going to come. She's actually here. We're going to come right back with more in just a moment. All right. It is nice to know that we have resources right here in Missoula to help you with just about anything you might need. And a couple of those are right here in our studio. Bryce Christians, Weed District Manager, and Sandy Perrin, Plant Clinic Horticulturist. Now, what was Bobby talking about there, Bryce?
Yeah, so there were a couple different things that Bobby was mentioning. The first part of her comments about the knapweed disappearing from these bugs, but then another weed coming in is a pretty classic example of what we call secondary invasion. So all of our weeds are really adapted to these disturbed sites. And if you get rid of one, there's a high potential of another weed coming in and taking its place. And sometimes that weed is worse than the first one, like Horticulturast, which goes to seed many times throughout the year, so very difficult to control, and yes, very toxic to horses. One of the things that we like to focus on when we're working with landowners is making sure that they're trying to grow what they need on their property rather than just trying to get rid of the weed that they see and targeting it. That we want to make sure that they have a healthy plant community that is adapted or resilient enough to remain healthy depending on how they're using it. So if it's being grazed for horses, being grazed for sheep, we want to make sure that the plants that are there are healthy enough and robust enough and can take that kind of grazing pressure.
I have heard that just regular old green grass can be one of the worst weeds. It's really difficult to get rid of. Am I right or not?
Yeah, it really depends on what you're managing for. If you're
Right.
managing for a diverse wildflower plant community, some of our agricultural grasses like Kentucky bluegrass or smooth brome can come in and be very difficult to control, and they will definitely outcompete, your balsam root and your penstemons and some of those wildflowers that people like.
I don't want to leave skeleton rush because that sounds so wicked. I just want to know what it is, and that was part of Bobby's question as well.
Yep. So the second part of her question about that particular plant, which it's rush skeleton weed, but I think the other one does sound cooler. That is a new invader in western Montana. There are significant populations in eastern Washington and Idaho, but we're starting to see it move in a little bit along the rail lines, so north of here, up around Plains, up in Sanders and Mineral County. We do have one small infestation in Missoula County that we've been watching and treating that came in on the root ball of a tree that someone bought in a nursery in Idaho. There were seeds in it, but it's very aggressive. It's seeds spread by wind like dandelions, and they've been able to find that they can spread multiple miles from that. We also have a number of infestations in the bitterroot that we think have come over probably either from the salmon area naturally or potentially from fighting fires in that area.
So what does it look like, the skeleton stuff?
It's very nondescript. It's called skeleton weed because it doesn't have a lot of vegetation on the upper branches. It has a rosette really similar to a dandelion. And if you look at the stem of the plant, it's going to have downward-facing spines, and that's going to be the big diagnostic feature. But the flowers are very nondescript. Even when it's going to seed, you don't really see anything other than this, what looks like a dead plant.
So it's sneaky.
Super sneaky.
Does it amaze you that these weeds, these plants, are so incredibly hardy and self-sufficient, basically?
Yeah, it's really amazing if you're a plant nerd to talk about a lot of these plants because they're so adapted to some of our unique situations here, and their life strategy is just, they produce a lot of seed. They're able to utilize resources where other plants aren't able to utilize resources. They're pretty amazing plants.
Yeah, we're going to come back. We have another hour to talk with Bryce and Sandy. We'd love to have you give us a call, 721-1290. Sandy will get to talk eventually, I promise. We're going to come right back after the top of the hour break, and we're going to talk with Sandy about her plant. She's a plant clinic horticulturist, and if there's things you're trying to grow, I bet she can probably help you out. 721-1290 is our number. We're coming right back. Okay, we are back. That's John King over there. I'm Peter Christian. Joining us in studio, Bryce Christians, Weed District Manager, and the forgotten woman, ladies and gentlemen, Sandy Perrin, who is the Plant Clinic Horticulturist. Now, would you please explain? First of all, welcome to the show after a full half hour. It's good to have you. So tell us what a plant horticulturist does.
So in Missoula County, we're real lucky to have a plant clinic, and you can bring me in all kinds of plants to identify, or insects, or what's going wrong with your plant or tree, a lot of lawn questions. And then I help folks get their gardens going, soil testing, telling them what kind of varieties to plant.
Oh, you're the person I need to talk to. Forget this guy. All right, so we bought this piece of land, and there's been a house on it since like the 50s. But there has never, as far as I can tell, ever been soil there. Like, it goes down like a half of an inch, and then it's, and frankly, the lawn, aside from the weeds, is just like, there'll be stretches of dirt, and then there'll be some little grasses, and they struggle everywhere. When you start at this level, like, what can you do?
Well, it depends on what you want. So if you want the ultimate bluegrass, golf course lawn, then you're going to need to bring in a lot of soil and compost to really, get that going. Or you can look at your native species of grass. So some of those are more of a bunch grass, so they're not going to give you that smooth golf course look, but it's certainly they will adapt to that.
What is the cheapest and easiest? Because that's the kind of guy I am.
Probably doing, a native look, then some sheep fescue. You could use some prairie June grass, some buffalo grass, maybe, depending on your site. Is it shady? Is it sunny?
It's mostly exposed to the sun.
Yeah. So also, I thought it would be to bring in like some sort of a type of finished compost to help top dress that if you're going to seed that lawn. So it'll help hold in some moisture, add a little bit of nutrients.
Now you need to tell this guy whose middle name is Gardner. It's such a joke. My wife just laughs all the time. You need to describe each of those terms. Top dress, all that. What does that mean? I'm thinking.
So top dress is you're putting
coat and tails and stuff.
Thin layer of some sort of good organic matter that's going to just seal the top of that seed so birds can't eat it.
So you just spread it over the top of the seed.
Yeah, real lightly, like somewhere between a quarter to a half inch, depending on what you're seeding.
Okay.
And then keep it wet. You have to water it daily and keep it moist till you get good germination. And once your lawn starts to get established, usually after a year or so, then you can kind of back off on all that watering routine.
And where would you start? I feel like this is going to be a decade in the making, and then John will probably not finish it. So the lawn is very large. Like, how do I tackle it? Do you pick one side, just start growing there?
Yeah, start one section. And if you have dogs and children, you may want to do some sort of temporary barriers so you don't have everybody running over it and disturbing it. And just start on one section of the house and see how that worked for 1 year, and then just move that around until you can get it under control. Same thing if you want to do a more intense seeding, like with a bluegrass, or even just by sod. Even with some of the native species, there are some sod farms that will have a drought-tolerant mix, so you could actually... But they usually do want some better prep because you've got a live plant at that point, and you're still going to need several inches of good quality topsoil.
Of soil below.
Correct.
I gotcha. So for someone that doesn't have any soil, the buffalo grass, was that the one that you said?
There's buffalo. Most commonly probably are some of the fescue types that people use in this area. Yeah, so sheep fescue is what they use to seed roadsides on highways that hold those embankments, and so we know that's really tough drought tolerance.
All right, I'm writing it down. Sheep fescue.
All right, now again, is this difficult? Do you just throw it out there and let it go, or do you actually have to strategically plant it?
It is a throw method, basically. You're going to broadcast it out, so there's going to be so many. They'll give you a seeding rate based on if it's 200 square feet. Then they may say, okay, you need 1 pound per 500 square feet, so they can figure out how much seed you need in an area to get it well covered.
Mm-hmm. Now, what about the weeds that you have? So I'm one of those guys that is not like this guy next to me, Bryce, who knows all of the weeds, although apparently not able to describe them over the radio. We'll work on that for next year. I have no idea what I'm looking at.
Well, then you dig them up and you bring them into me, and I tell you if they're an annual weed, so it means that they just have a 1 year life cycle, and you continually mow those and they go away. Or if they're a perennial weed, and then we try to figure out that life cycle, when is the best time to combat it. If you want to use a herbicide or are you going to use just the, if it's just a few of them, just pop them up out of
So
the
what does that
ground?
relationship look like? I mean, where's your clinic? Does insurance cover the consultation? What do I do?
Yeah, it does.
Is there Obamacare for plants? That's basically what we're looking at here.
Yeah, so we're located in the extension offices, which is at 2825 Santa Fe Court, and I'm basically in the office Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 4:30.
Where is Santa Fe Court?
And that's off of the intersection of Reserve and Mullen. It's right behind Albertsons off of Great Northern. We're
Okay.
kind of tucked in back in
Oh,
there,
okay.
close to the government offices, but you can't access us
Kind of like
through.
by Lambros and
A little bit further north of Lambros.
Okay.
Or south of Lambros.
Good
Gotcha.
Excuse me.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
we're up against our first break of the hour, and I'm shocked that our lines aren't lighting up this morning because we have Sandy Perrin, she's a plant clinic horticulturist, and Bryce Christians, weed district manager. These people are standing here in our studio to answer your questions. So, if you don't mind, John and I pestering them with our little problems, we'd love to hear from you at 721-1290, and we're going to come right back after this. All righty, we are back on Talkback, 721-1290, and boy, I'll tell you what, when we give our listeners a challenge, boom, they just jump right in there. So let's get right on the phone. Go ahead, John.
full. And if you do have questions and can't get in through the phone lines, go ahead and leave them on our Facebook page, and we'll try to get them into the show.
Okay, so here we go. Now, you guys are officially rock stars now, since you've filled up all four of our phone lines. Susan, you're up first. Hi.
Okay, so I rose to your challenge, and the reason I called is that I, like Peter, if I go out in the garden, I itch because I'm allergic to everything that grows, and I hate mosquitoes, and I hate dirt, and I really kill plants. So I admire horticulturalists. My husband has a green thumb, and now he has a bad back, so he doesn't do any gardening, and we hire people.
All right.
I'm pathetic.
So do you have a question for either of our guests?
I don't. I just called in to say that I just
Thank you
called
for your
in-
confession, then.
I'm unloading my confession that, I hear about gardening and I start to itch.
Many of us have black thumbs. You can be proud.
Plants, I'm not kidding you. Plants see me coming and they scream.
Okay. Thanks, Susan.
All right.
Bye-bye. All right. Larry, you're on Talkback. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm glad the callers are giving these folks a break from Peter and John.
Yes, amen to that.
A number of years ago, I was on the weed board, and we had the voters pass a mill levy to provide grants to landowners and landowner associations to fight the weeds. And I wondered if Bryce could talk a little bit about that program, how much money there is available for landowners to fight weeds and what they need to do to apply. And also, this last year, our neighborhood association had a fall application of insecticide, and our big villain out here is leafy spurge. And this spring, it seemed to do a very good job, and I wondered if you could talk about the difference between spring applications of insecticides or pesticides and the fall application, which ones work better.
Okay. Thanks, Larry. Appreciate the call.
Thanks.
Good
Yeah,
talk.
thanks,
Good talk
Larry.
with you. Go ahead.
So, yeah, Larry brought up a good point that we do provide a lot of financial assistance to landowners in Missoula County for control of invasive species, as well as doing revegetation work after you do that spray work. Right now, we have $20,000 that we allocate every year for cost share assistance for landowners. So the limit is $500. So you put in an application, you spend $500. Well, you spend $1,000, we'll reimburse you 50% up to $500 or for $500. So
Great.
That's available. In addition to that, we also work with a number of landowner groups across the county to put in larger cost share grant proposals to the Department of Agriculture at the state level.
Now, specifically, what is that money allowed to go to? Are you talking about insecticide or pesticides or what?
Yep. So essentially, the two main things that it can go towards are herbicide application or seed after you do your herbicide treatment. And that can be whether you're doing it on your own, you're buying the herbicide and applying it on your own, or if you're hiring a commercial applicator. We have a number of really good commercial applicators that will work with you to do your work on your site.
Okay, great. Let's go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to address his other question about spring and fall applications, which is a really good one. So typically the fall applications work better, in my opinion, both for controlling the plant that you're targeting, but also minimizing the impact that you have on some of the other plants that you have out there. A lot of our invasives do have a fall green up, like we were talking about dandelions earlier, so they're pulling down resources and trying to get ready for winter, and so they're very susceptible for those herbicide treatments. A lot of our natives are still dormant, and a lot of our grasses are dormant, so you won't have as much of an impact on your desirable plants as you will on the weeds.
Okay, let's get Dave on the line. 1, 2, 3. Okay, Dave, you're on. Go ahead.
Yes, I have a couple Canadian chokecherry trees, and they keep getting growths on them, and I have to cut off limbs. Is there anything I can do to stop that from killing the trees?
So I assume you're referring to the black corky-looking substance that you see on the branches?
Right.
Yes, that's called black knot, and really pruning them out because it isn't terribly detrimental to the tree. It doesn't usually go around the main stalk of the trunk or anything, is really the best bet. You can apply some fungicides, but, it's kind of in a lot of native plants in our area with the chokecherries, so it can be spread really easy when they sporulate. And so it can be somewhat hard to control other than just pruning them out because it isn't that detrimental.
It seems to kill or take away the energy from the limbs that it's affected.
Right, it certainly does, but it usually doesn't affect the larger trunk of the tree.
Okay, well, thank you.
All right, thanks, Dave.
Time for some Facebook questions real quick?
Go ahead.
Tim wants to know about white top. How long does it take for, if someone calls you, for people to come in and get service?
So as far as coming in and getting identification and getting recommendations, so yeah, this is our busy season, so we try to get back in touch with folks as soon as we possibly can. They'll definitely get a call within the next day. And depending on what their issue is, if they know what their weed is and they know what they want to do to control it, we can work with them right then to give them the proper recommendations. If they're unsure of the plants that they have on their property, we will do free site visits to their property and walk the property with them, assess what they have that's beneficial, what they have that they need to control, and then work out a plan with them.
I will tell you what we found. We have a great big bull pine up right above our house, and it has shed years and years and years of pine cones. I mean, it's a vacant area, but it's kind of pretty, and the pine cones are down there. Anyway, we were up there digging some weeds out because they were unsightly. And as we pushed aside some of those pine cones that had been there for a long time, underneath there was the most wicked prickly pear cactus I had ever seen. And we have a lot of kids that come through there on the way to and from, like to catch the bus stop. And the last thing we wanted was for them to be walking on that. And so we spent several hours. We kept pushing the pine cones back, and there was just like a huge field of this prickly pear, and I had never seen it before on my property. And man, that is wicked to dig up. It just tears the heck out of bags and gloves and everything. So what do you do about something like that? You just have to get rid of it, or what?
So the prickly pear that we have in western Montana is called fragile prickly pear. It's very small, but it does like those really dry acidic sites that you see under ponderosa pine. There are a number of herbicides that would work to help control that, but the individual sections of that cactus, it only takes one of those to reroot and start the plant again. So if you're raking it or trying to just move it out of the way, you may just be spreading it to different parts of your property.
You just want to get rid of it, basically.
Yeah, and so in that situation, it would be hard to get other plants to come in and compete with it. So you'd probably be using an herbicide to remove that from
Good to know. All right. So we're going to get Carl and Garth and Jay and Thomas, and the lines are humming now. And so we're going to come right back with more of Talk Back here in just a moment. Talk Back rolling right along, 721-1290. All of our lines are full. If you can't get through, you can make your comments or questions on our Facebook page. So let's get right back to the phones and keep our guests busy. And we have Bryce and Sandy both here with us. Carl, you're on. Go ahead.
Hi. I was just wondering if you address the over-the-counter weed killer by brand names and just what works best. I suppose it depends on the weed you're trying to get rid of. And also, in the wintertime, we have marauding mule deer coming through our yard and eating, branches and everything else around. And certain plants they leave alone, others they just eat right up to a certain height. And so I'm not sure what, other than fencing these individual plants off, what you can do. In regard to the weed killer, notice that the birds like to eat certain weeds, and I kind of hate to get rid of the weeds in my yard in that regard. And also, there are warnings on the weed killer about letting it dry before you let pets on the lawn. And I'm wondering just how dangerous weed killer is for that.
Okay, let's answer that. Thanks, Carl.
You bet.
Yeah, I can definitely take the first part of that question. I don't think I'll handle the deer one. I'll have Sandy do that one. But there are a number of really good herbicides that are out on the market that you can buy over the counter. And Carl's right that it depends on the plant species that you're trying to control. As far as the safety concerns, Oregon Extension has a very good website that puts together all of the research materials for what's the impact on deer, what's the impact on fish, what's the impact on pollinators. That's called xtox.net. And you can go there and search any of the labels that you find in any of the stores that are selling herbicides in Missoula. What we tend to do is have a conversation with an individual about a specific plant. So people are free to call me. My phone number is 258-4217, and we can talk about what weed you're trying to control and what herbicide you can use, and then we can go through that label together and talk about what the restriction is as far as time after it dries, when you should be applying it, and those types of questions.
What works best on knapweed?
Knapweed is actually one of our easiest weeds to kill using herbicides. The one that is most commonly used right now is called Milestone, which you can buy over the counter. It has a very low use rate. You're putting out 5 to 6 ounces per acre.
Wow.
The one concern that we've seen with Milestone is that it has a little bit of residual, and if you're using it in a pasture where you're collecting that manure to then put it on your garden, that herbicide works really well on tomatoes and potatoes as well. So you want to be careful with how you're using the property that they're going to be doing that application on.
Okay, so Sandy, what about the deer? What do we do?
Well, for deer, unfortunately, fencing is really the only thing to do in the middle of winter because there are certainly some products you can apply to trees and shrubs that help repel the deer, or it tastes bad. But with all the consistent moisture in the wintertime, you would have to reapply it so often. So it's better just to put some sort of a temporary fencing around it.
Yeah, so Kitty was saying she puts like hot sauce, some kind of special mixture on.
Right. Yeah, there's some different, egg mixtures, some with clove oil, things like that. There's some blood-based mixtures as well.
What, blood?
Yeah.
Where do you get this stuff? You guys are creeping me out now. Eggs, hot sauce, blood.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah. So that, the
you just go to the slaughterhouse and order a couple pints?
Right.
What?
No, a lot of garden centers
really
carry those
That's amazing.
Products. You have to reapply them so often that probably in the wintertime that's not real cost effective or fun to get out there. So just a temporary fencing around. Some of their favorite things are, like the arborvitaes, certain types of shrubs.
Or you could just play Miley Cyrus records and keep the deer away.
There you go.
That might do it. All right, let's continue on and get Garth on the line. Good morning, Garth. You're on Talkback. Go ahead.
Good morning. This is for anybody who wants to answer. It is definitely a plant question. When I called the Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C., and asked them, how do I know that this product that I purchased, this plant food product, is organic? Their answer is, we have no test to prove that something is organic. So does she have a test if I bring in some food products from a plant that she can tell me that it's organic, that I pay extra for? Go ahead. I'll listen.
Thanks, Garth.
No, unfortunately, we don't have any labs here at our offices that would test food products for that. That is a Department of Agriculture question.
So is organic, is that a big scam or what?
No. People who grow organically are certified by the Department of Agriculture, so they know that they are not applying any pesticide products that could impact the plant.
What makes organic?
So most times with organics, you're not using any type of a synthetic material to enhance the plants, whether you're using for
like Miracle-Gro,
correct, fertilizers or any other pesticides, herbicides, things like that, because it has a residual on the plant that the plant would absorb, and then they're usually very much at safe levels, but still they are a residual that can be on the plant.
So let me ask you, this is a silly question, but are all weeds organic? Because they don't need any pesticide or fertilizer, right? I mean, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But not certified.
Yeah. All right, let's continue on. That was probably the stupidest question of the day. All right, Jay.
He literally is cracking up back here.
I get the prize. All right, I get the T-shirt today. Jay, good morning. You're on Talkback. Go ahead.
All right, cool. There's a lot of good questions coming up. I have two parts. I have one that's addressed to both anybody that can answer it. I have a mother-in-law that she's very mobile, limited, but she likes having her yard and having gardening areas. Is there any? Can either of these two people comment about services here in Missoula that enable seniors or elderly people to have gardens and grounds open? And can they comment about any of the gardening programs here in Missoula that offer services for other people?
Okay.
Well, there's certainly a number of community gardens in Missoula, and they're certainly all over Missoula. So you might want to check Garden City Harvest is the organization. And then they rent out garden plots. And like I said, there's I think they have 7 different areas in Missoula that they would be allowed. And they prep all the garden for them and everything. So they just basically go in and plant, maintain, and harvest all summer long. In your own yard, I would probably say no, unless there's possibly Habitat for Humanity might be something to contact, that they would be able to come in and build some raised beds. That might be a possibility if they would qualify.
And the Missoula Senior Center might be an
I
opportunity.
think that's where the Habitat for Humanity could be through.
All right. Thanks for the call, Jay.
All right. Thanks very much.
Appreciate it. And we're up against a break. So would you want to do some Facebook?
Well,
go ahead.
We have a general question.
Okay.
What are the battle plans for cheatgrass and hound's tongue? From Ruth.
Okay.
Good questions. So there is a biocontrol that we're looking at for cheatgrass. Cheatgrass is one of those nasty second invaders that kind of hangs out in the plant community until you treat something like leafy spurge or spotted knapweed, and then it just flushes and goes crazy. And the last couple of years, the moisture regime that we've had have been very conducive to cheatgrass growth. The biocontrol is a bacteria that's naturally occurring in our area, so there are a number of companies that are working on developing a product that you can apply. They're not available yet in Montana, but I think that's certainly very promising. For hound's tongue, that's a difficult one as well. We've had a lot of questions about deer today. Deer are really good at moving those hound's tongue seeds around. There is also work on biological control for hound's tongue. There are a number of herbicides that you can use, but it's very difficult because it tends to grow in very shrubby areas or where there's a lot of trees where deer are coming through and brushing those seeds off. So we can certainly assess your situation with you and figure out what's the best plan of attack for you. But the biocontrols are the bigger picture plan.
Okay, so give us your phone number again.
It's 258 4217.
Yeah, we'll do that every break so folks can write it down. And so Bobby, Jason, Rick, and Thomas, we're coming right back. It's a Tuesday edition of Talkback, and we are having a rockin' time here this morning. We've got Sandy Perrin, plant clinic horticulturist, and Bryce Christians, weed district manager for the county. And all four lines are humming. Let's jump right back in here and say good morning to Bobby. You're back. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, two things, cheatgrass and herbicides. If you sell hay or feed hay to any of your animals, there are some herbicides that if you do use it on your hay and you feed it to your animals, when you take the manure and put it on your garden, it'll kill your garden. There was a dairy out here in the Bitterroot. They bought hay that had been treated with 2,4-D. They made manure compost out of it. They sold it to people. It killed their gardens, and they got sued. Then the thing with cheatgrass is I had cheatgrass. I pulled some of it, and then some of the bigger areas, I watered the heck out of it, and I mowed it with a catcher to get the seeds. I don't have cheatgrass anymore. So that's how you can get rid of cheatgrass, because it's like notorious. It's really hard to get rid of.
Okay.
But as far as the herbicides go, if you sell hay or feed it to your livestock, you need to know what you're doing, and you need to contact somebody who can tell you if it has residual effects and will affect the manure. And I also got told by a guy who's a big farmer, and he said, you could actually use that 2,4-D around your place and around your well, and when you drink the water, you could actually go out doing your bodily functions and kill weeds yourself.
All right, Bobby. Thanks,
okay, thank you.
Thanks for the call. Well, that's earthy. So do our guests have any comment on that?
Yeah, so I don't know about the third one. We recommend that one as a proper application of herbicides. But the first two, she's absolutely correct on. The cheatgrass is annual plant, so it's dependent on its seed production that year. So if you can get ahead of that either by mowing or using some herbicides and prevent that seed from going back into your space, you're going to get ahead of it. For the herbicide question in hay, that's what I was talking about with the milestone. And according to that label, even it says that you have to pay attention to the use of that herbicide in hay crops. 2,4-D is not limited in that way, but any product that has an active ingredient that's called aminopyrrolid would have that impact. So you really got to pay attention to the label.
All right, off we go. Let's continue on. And Jason, you are on Talkback. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. So my question's about deciduous trees. Not sure if it fits into the category today, but I live at pretty high elevation, 5,000 feet. I know in Missoula there's a lot of deciduous trees. Are they able to grow at that elevation, and is there anything that I need to do as far as mulching in the winter to keep the roots from freezing or anything like that?
Well, you do certainly want to pick a species that is hardy to your site and elevation, and into Montana, depending, like a lot of fruit trees are not going to do well up there. You're going to have a shorter season. So certainly, and look at your native species, because usually there's a number of natives growing around you, and pick from that, not trying to bring some exotic Japanese maple up there, something that's just marginally hardy.
But I like that dogwood, yeah.
That flowering dogwood. But there are a lot of natives, and there are a lot of native suppliers that can help you with that. But knowing your site and just looking around, again, taking pictures, bringing in samples to our office, we can certainly help you figure out what that is.
Great. Let's get Rick on the line. Rick, you're on Talkback. Go ahead.
Hi. Aspen and birch are real good up high. I was going to call about the deer situation. I spent the last 28 years up in Alaska, and I've moved back down to Montana, and I planted 15 little fruit trees. And I'm doing the same thing that I did up in Alaska. I take Irish Spring soap and make a little hook, run a coat hanger hook through it, and hang them on my trees. And they get the wind, the rain, the weather, spreads a little tiny coat of that stuff all over the leaves. Moose won't eat it, and deer won't eat it. I don't have any fences, and I've got deer all over the place. And they don't bother it a bit.
Well, good for you.
So anyway,
does it have to be Irish Spring? Yeah. Does it have to be Irish Spring or?
Well, that's all I've used. So
okay. All right.
I recommend that. You can get it cheap at Costco.
My family's from Ireland, many of them, and I can tell you that there's a special smell that will prevent people from wanting to come around and eat stuff.
All right, let's move along. This is Thomas. Hold on. Thomas, you're on Talkback. Go ahead, sir.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good.
We're reclaiming kind of a neglected area, and what was last year about 300 square foot beautiful wildflower bed is now kind of a really impressive stand of knapweed. And I got out there last night and started pulling by hand, and with some success. It's hard to get all the roots, and I just wanted to ask if you can go after. I mean, these things are 30, 36 inches tall. Can you hit those with milestone, or am I better off pulling what I can by hand and applying the milestone when it starts coming back up, or what would be the best attack?
Yeah, good question. So with an area that you're trying to do active reclamation on and trying to get a lot of those wildflowers back in there, you really want to pay attention to the product that you're using. And Milestone has a residual that's going to stay in the soil that will help control knapweed for a longer period of time, but it will also prevent you from being able to plant some of those things in there that you would want. You'd have a longer plant back interval. So certainly you want to control the seed production. There's a number of other herbicide products that you could use in smaller spaces to try to get a foothold of the plants that you want in there. And mowing also will help you prevent a lot of that seed production. If it's already kind of bolting and you're getting up to the point where you're getting flowers, you may want to knock that back a little bit and then do a fall treatment.
Yeah, we're not into flowers yet, but it's too tall to mow with anything I have.
Yeah. So herbicides are effective up to flower for spotted knapweed. They'll be a little less impactful, but you could still use something like a 2,4-D or clopyralid.
Okay. And so the milestone, is that selective? Is that going to knock down everything but grass, or?
It's going to be really impactful on a lot of the different wildflower species. Yeah, it's selective to broadleaf plants, so it's going to impact any of your wildflowers.
I mean, I might just have to nuke this thing and wait a year till the knapweed's gone and the milestone has run its course. But I'm just, again, should I just go pull it all out by hand?
Certainly that would be the most selective. If you have some teenagers in your neighborhood that need some extra energy expended, go for it.
Yeah. All right, thanks for the call. Now, go ahead.
Well, we have Rebecca's marriage
for a break. So
her marriage could be saved if you answer this question, I think. She says, I have been using sulfur to prevent a rust fungus from attacking my tomato plants. They have been looking great until last week or so, and now there is a lot of noticeable fungus and spores. A farmer down the road tells me that once I see the fungus, the sulfur is no longer effective at preventing. And the directions on the sulfur say not to spray plants that are flowering, which they are now. But my husband is telling me to go spray the plants again. What should I do?
Hold on to that answer. Stand by. We're up again. We're like 3 minutes over a break, so we're going to come right back. We're going to keep you in suspense, and that Pam, Kevin, and David, we're going to get you guys on as well the next few minutes. Stay with us. Oh, yeah. We're back on Talkback. We got so many calls, and we want to answer the question and save a marriage. So we're talking about the sulfur.
Sulfur on tomatoes.
Right.
Yeah, so there certainly are some different types of fungal leaf spots and problems with tomatoes, but sulfur is preventative, not curative. So once you have whatever your problem is, sulfur isn't going to work. Yeah. I'd have to see the leaf or a sample of it or a picture of it sent to the office, and then I could recommend a fungicide that would be a little more curative.
This gal is hanging on your every word. So how does she do that? How can she actually?
So she can actually email me a picture if it's plantclinic@Missoula.YouTube.org.
Okay.
And we can take a look at it, and I can give her a call back or respond to that and give her some suggestions on how to take care of it.
Plant Clinic at
Missoula.eduplace.org.
Eduplace.org.
It's an education eduplace.
Okay, perfect. That's great. All right, so Pam, you're up next. Hi, you're on Talkback. Go ahead.
Good morning. Thanks for taking my call.
You bet.
See, I have a 20-foot bristlecone pine tree, and I've had a couple of people tell me that the white stuff at the base of the needles and stuff is an infestation, and then I've had other people tell me that's their pitch.
That is their pitch. That is a common way to identifying a bristlecone pine. It has that natural pitchiness on the needles, and it is really confused with a scale that infests pine trees. But with a bristlecone, that's just natural.
Okay, well, that sounds good, so then I don't have to spray it and kill my tree.
That's
Thanks for the call. All right. Kevin, you're up next on Talkback. Go ahead.
Well, good morning, everyone. I got two questions real quick. Sandy, I was in your office here early in the fall, and I had a moth issue in my lawn, and you recommended I use a product like Ironite. I did use a granular Ironite, but it makes these little black holes in my lawn, so obviously I got a bigger moth problem than I thought. Do I have to use like the liquid granular Ironite, or do I have a bigger issue?
Well, when the moss dies, it does turn black, and so typically it is recommended you need to do some sort of like a thatch or a heavy raking to remove that dead moss, so then that grass can grow in thicker. And certainly fertilization is another component when anytime you have moss or problems in your lawn, making sure you're giving it enough nitrogen.
Okay. And then the second part of the question is, you folks were offering a weed grant program years ago when Alan Knudsen was on board there. And are you still offering that? And the third part of that question is, a lot of products have been renamed, and I think a lot of consumers aren't aware of, Forefront is no longer Forefront. It's now called Spray-Zone. So all those products that I use, I have to go around and try and relocate them because they've been changed because of the patent. So I think a lot of consumers aren't aware of that situation.
Okay, thanks for the call. So, any response?
Yeah, so we do still have that grant program. That's the $20,000 I mentioned earlier. And typically our applications are available on our website starting in October. They're due in early spring, and then we try to get the contracts with those landowners out so they can get work done by April of that year. As far as the changing names for herbicides, there are a number of really popular herbicides that have, extended their patents, so there are a number of generics out. It's always important to look at the label and look at the active ingredient, and that will help you find, the product that you're looking for, because when those trade names change, the active ingredient doesn't, so you can search that way.
Okay, real quick. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, this one is quick. I don't know how much you are into entomology, but apparently a lot, since you knew the name of that weevil earlier. Bruce wants to know if praying mantises are native to Montana. I would say no. As a budding entomologist at the age of 7, I could never find one. So I'm guessing we don't, but maybe you know. He says he's been seeing them recently.
No, praying mantis aren't native, and we're still really unsure if they actually even overwinter here. But garden centers bring in their egg cases because they are very effective predators of small-bodied, soft-bodied insects like aphids and mites like that. But we certainly have seen more praying mantis in the summer months, but most of the time they just don't withstand our winters. They don't maybe make their whole life cycle to lay an egg case, and if it's hardy enough to make it through the winter here.
Okay, and with that, we're going to take a 1-minute break. David, Emmett, and Mike will try to get all your calls in the next 8 minutes. We'll be right back. Okay, we are back on Talk Back. We have exactly 8.5 minutes. And first, I want to say thanks to our guests, Bryce and Sandy. You guys have been awesome. And I think what I'm just mentioning during the break, we've had more calls today than we've had in a lot of different topics. So we appreciate your expertise and you being willing to answer all these questions. But David, you have been waiting the longest. Go ahead, sir.
There's
David.
Not a lot of non-native trees, native trees in Montana. I was wondering if you could recommend a non-native tree to grow in the Missoula Valley in my yard.
Okay.
So it certainly depends on what size of a mature tree and the width that you're looking for. There are many conifers, different types of pines and spruces that would do great if you're looking for deciduous trees.
Not a conifer.
Okay, so one that loses its leaves. So there's, the varieties out there are really lots. We can look at doing some shorter type of trees like flowering crab apples, so you get some blooms in the spring and berries for the birds later on in the summer. Choke cherries would be another source, or even if you're looking into some larger trees, like there's quite a few different types of green ash and certain types of maples. That would be a good choice. Even some lindens in there. Boy, you could give me a call at the office, 258-4213, and we can walk through that because there are lots of choices,
right,
depending
David?
on what you would like.
Okay, David, thanks for the call. And I believe, who's next? This is Thomas? All right. Thomas, you're on Talkback. Go ahead.
Hello, this is Emmett.
Emmett, you're on Talkback. Oh, there it is. Yeah, I got you. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. This is Emmett again. Well, thanks for taking my call, but I do have a question about allergies. These last couple of years, my allergies have been really bad. Normally, I haven't had allergies, but this year in particular has been really bad. I go to an allergy specialist, and I cough so much I'm worse. It's worse than Hillary Clinton. But I'm wondering, have the allergens been particularly bad these last couple of years or not? The grass pollen, the weed pollen, has it been particularly bad these last couple of years or not?
Certainly this time of year, our grasses are starting, all of our native grasses up on, Mount Jumbo, Mount Sentinel, they're all starting to flower right now. A lot of pine pollen in the air right now. Mm-hmm. So we definitely have these windows. I don't know if it's been necessarily better or worse the last couple of years, but this is definitely the time when
What are you
people
specifically allergic to, Emmett?
Specifically, grass pollen, and there's an outdoor mold. It's invisible. It's just in the air. An outdoor mold invisible too, in dogs and cats and horses.
Okay. All right.
We will have an allergy show eventually, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
But this show is not it.
All right. Let's get Mike on the line. Mike, you're on Talkback. Go ahead.
Hey, well, here's what it is. I've got this creeping vine that showed up last year at my place here, and in the space of 1 year, it takes over everything, and it grows from at least 4 inches to a foot in 1 day. And at the end of the year, the root that's in the ground would be, as the one I dug up was like 4 inches in diameter, for crying out loud to you, and leaves look like Norwegian maple leaves. Do you have any idea what it is?
Okay.
He wants to know. Go through it. So it's got a long vine. The leaves look like Norwegian maple leaves.
Yeah. It looks like the leaves look like maple leaves, and it's a creeping vine. It dies off in the winter time, but it grows at an unbelievable rate of a minimum of 4 inches to a foot in 1 day.
Could be wild buckwheat, possibly.
I think that is
could be what?
Wild buckwheat, she said.
Maybe. I'm not.
Yeah, I think that's a good example of a plant.
Don't grow 30 feet, not in a summertime, does it? Buckwheat?
Well, there's a lot of different species, so I'm not really certain. I'd have to have a sample.
Yeah, if you could bring one of those into our office, I think we could really help you out with the ID.
It resembles like kudzu down south. It's basically the same thing.
Or it might be white byrony.
But
that's certainly a very fast-growing vine that actually grows from a root in the ground, and it does have a kind of a maple-looking leaf.
Yeah,
so white byrony, and it'll have some white flowers followed by purple berries, and I think the berries.
That's probably it. But I'm going to tell you that's something that you don't want to get down in the forest because the damn stuff's pretty impossible to kill.
Yeah. Digging up the root is the best route on that one.
Oh, yeah. Considering root might go clear to China, and you got runners, runners all over that. If they get wet, they sprout again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got to keep
but
on
where
top
do you have any idea what country they came from?
I don't offhand.
Oh, okay. No, this really scares the heck out of me because I'll tell everybody I'm a trapper. I really care about the environment. But this gets down into the river bottoms and stuff. It will run you probably $1 million an acre to get rid of the blasted stuff. So. And I know of 2 places where it's growing, and you just can't get rid of it almost.
All right, Mike. Thanks for the call, buddy.
Bye.
Appreciate it. Okay, so we have 2 minutes left in the show.
All right, so for my wife's birthday, my father-in-law came over, and I assisted, very minimally, in building a pergola. If we wanted to grow vines on the pergola, what sort of thing would grow well in Montana?
Well, some really easy ones would be honeysuckle. Certainly that would be a very easy to grow vine. They're very hardy and tolerant of a lot of bad soil sounding like that you have up there.
She said bad soil, but she winked at me like bad gardener. We both knew what she was saying. Yeah.
But I think honeysuckle is probably one of the easiest ones. Or certainly you can do things like Virginia creeper that just give you a green vine with no flowers. Very fast growing.
Yeah. Now the honeysuckle, I mean, you just plant it near the base of the pergola, and it'll go up there on its own? Yeah,
you're probably going to have to. It doesn't have any adhesive pads on it, so you do have to put some sort of like chicken wire or netting for it to grow up. However, like Virginia creeper does have the little adhesive pads, and they actually stick on their way up.
Okay, gotcha. Now, are they going to get out of control? Oh, I'm sorry.
That's what we have less than a minute. So I want to get some contact information from these two wonderful people. All right. So Bryce, you first. How do we contact you?
Yeah, you can contact me easiest by phone, which is 258-4217, or you can always stop in the office and we can have a chat. If you have a plant to bring in and Sandy IDs it as a weed.
And your office is located where?
2825 Santa Fe Court.
Okay, so you guys are in the same place.
Office.
Okay,
Yes.
Right, wonderful. So how about you? Contact it.
Yeah, so you can contact me at 258-4213, and I do want to admit that I do controls for all kinds of insects that are invading your gardens and orchards, and I do a pest alert hotline that's recorded, and they can take that in any day, 24/7, 258-3820, tells you what bugs are out there, and I give recommendations of least toxic controls to take care of them.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you guys for being. You guys have been amazing guests, and all these phone calls, all these folks, they got their questions answered. You guys are terrific, and you're welcome on our show anytime.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
We're going to try to get you on twice a year, okay?
Okay.
Because that's when the weeds come out. So, and thanks, you guys. That's going to do it. Now, what about tomorrow's fabulous show, Mr. King?
We will have an emissary from Israel. Andy David will be in studio to discuss what's going on there.
Have a great day.